Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on day 2 of IPCon. I know it has been a thrilling journey thus far. We've learned a lot from a variety of different brands that Miro sells. Day 2, we're looking a little bit further into networking, specifically TCP acceleration, next generation firewalls, and overall just improvement of the overall network. So without any further ado, just if you guys. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I think just for some housekeeping sakes, I just want to double check. Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me? If you guys can just put into your chat box, it's towards the bottom there. All right, thank you, Yaku, Dieter, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So as I was saying, we are diving a bit deeper into networks, specifically layer 4. Anything that has to do with TCP and UDP, we are your guys. So to give you a little bit of background on Bequant and specifically my colleague Inigo, we've obviously been distributing hardware products for a plethora of years. I mean, it's essentially how we made our name in the industry, and it's also what has helped catapult us to become the distributor of choice. But from what we've seen and from what our customers explain to us is that, networks are becoming more than just hardware. And having accompanying software that can not just add value to existing hardware infrastructure, but that can increase the quality of your services, we need to look at those options because it is hell of a competitive out there, ladies and gentlemen. And, I like to think that we as the distributors, we've actually got a fairly fixed competitive landscape. Our barriers to entry are fairly high. Specifically as a distributor, you need a fair amount of capital in order to bring in the stock, pay for it, get the compliance, and then obviously the marketing ability to take the product into the market. In terms of ISPs, the barriers are much lower, the capital is not as intensive, and depending on what type of service provider you are, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, is dependent on how much capital you're going to have in order to launch your business and to sustain your business. So from what we've seen is that there are 2 major catalysts when it comes to customer growth, or should we say ISP growth. So that is, how can you get your existing customers to continue to utilize your services, and how can you now acquire new customers while minimizing your customer acquisition costs? And essentially, we went on a hunt to try and find ways in which we could improve our customers' networking experience. And then lo and behold, destiny would have it, we were introduced to Bequant. And ever since we partnered with Bequant, we've been able to offer an unparalleled product through to our service providers that has been taken up in ways in which Miro has never seen before. So ladies and gentlemen, as a product manager, one of my core features is to sell the success of my products. And one of the main barriers that I've had with Bequant, especially, is that my partners do not want their competitors to know what they're using, because it has given them that advantage. And we all need a little bit of advantage wherever we can get it. And specifically on TCP, I know it's fundamentally new to a lot of service providers, and especially with those that are in this webinar, we could have people that have had no idea what TCP acceleration is or what it can do for their company, and you've got people that have already had the meeting and that are just requiring a little bit more information. So I'd like to open up to everyone that this is a free trade. So hold on, Dieter, I see that you see there's a substantial lag. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to lower my video resolution, so that should help. We'll now just have lower quality Ryan speaking, but that's fine. I'm not going to be speaking for much longer. So I do apologize for the lag, but I would like to invite everyone that is in this webinar to please engage with us. As you've seen, the chat box that's just recently been highlighted, that is where you can put all your questions. And once I pass over to my colleague Inigo, he's going to be taking us through a little bit more of the commercial aspects of the product. And Yaku says we need some TCP shaping and QoS. Without a doubt, Yaku, we definitely need that. I need to take it to our service provider and tell them that they need to up their game. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have a fun time today. We're going to be learning about ways to increase your business services, because at the end of the day, if you can increase your services, you will maintain and keep your customers happy, and you'll also hopefully get new customers, because from what we've seen, the ISP game is hectic. There's no other way to explain it. I mean, the competitive landscape of being an ISP is tough. So whatever tools and arsenals you guys can implement within your networks needs to be sought after. And what my job is here at Miro is that I need to take these products through to you, and I need to help you adapt them and whatever's necessary in order for you to see success that you crave. So without any further ado, I'm going to unshare my face. I'm now going to pull up the Bequant webinar, and we're going to get straight into it, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm just going to say play from current slide. So Bequant, the beautiful thing about Bequant and being the Bequant product manager is that I've had a lot of expose into products that have got a lot of different line items that are in every type of niche market. The beautiful thing about Bequant is that it's got a very serious and direct channel. It's not ambiguous. The people that need Bequant use Bequant for a specific reason. So its uses are very direct, which means that its customer is very direct. So the ideal customer for Bequant is anyone that has any sensitivity to latency. Now, any provider that's in the room with us knows that the devil that's on your door is latency, lag, because essentially that's what will bury you 6 feet into the ground with your customers, is lag, latency, because lag and latency is what pushes end users to switch over to another provider. You could have the best layer one infrastructure that money can buy. You could have the top tier routers, everything happening for you. But if your latency is just out of whack, you will see that in your customer satisfaction index. And a lot of what our presentation focuses on today is how, through utilization of Bequant's network optimization tool, can I, the service provider, increase my customer satisfaction index. And to help break it down even further, we're going to classify our two desirable customers, and we're going to speak about them holistically in terms of a tier 2 provider and a tier 3 provider. Now, for a little bit of a summary, because ladies and gentlemen, we've got an hour. I'm used to half an hour slots, so I'm used to rushing. I don't want to rush. So a tier 2 provider is someone that owns the physical network. So they own the base station, they own the fiber in the ground, and essentially they go direct to consumer, or they do B2B. So they will then resell their line to a tier 3 provider who owns no physical infrastructure, and that is basically just reselling a tier 2 provider's network. Now, when you're a tier 3 provider, I think that is probably the most competitive part of the service providing game, because essentially you have no say on the network infrastructure, how it is built, how it is run. The only thing that you have is pipe, and you have customers, and those customers will throw you off with the snap of their fingers if they are dissatisfied with your speed and with your service. And how do customers check this? Well, whoever created the speed test is either our best friend or our worst enemy, because essentially what the speed test did is that it turned our end users into network experts. Because now, just through a simple download and upload test, they could judge the quality of their network. And if they were dissatisfied, they moved over, because there is no shortage of tier 3 service providers, because the capital required in order to create a tier 3 provider is so minimal that essentially they can pop up anywhere. As long as they have the brand, which is their name, they can essentially resell services off of tier 2 providers. And you're thinking about a tier 2 provider, what would you rather have? Would you rather have 10 customers buying 10 meg lines from you, or would you rather have a tier 3 provider buying a 500 meg or 1 gig line? you're probably going to want the tier 3 provider. B2B has always proved to be a larger revenue generation channel, specifically because a business's buying power is larger than a consumer's buying power. But we can't take the power away from the consumer, because word of mouth is a service provider's biggest asset or worst liability. Because I've been there. I'm sure everyone else in this webinar has been there, where we've been around a table or a braai or a fire pre-COVID, and we've discussed our network, we've discussed how we're doing this streaming and we're downloading this. And what's even happened more recently is that since COVID has forced us to move into the house, the household internet infrastructure has changed, ladies and gentlemen, because originally what was happening is that you would have one termination point, a Wi-Fi router that would cascade on the bottom half of the floor, and everyone that needed Wi-Fi would come to that part of the house, and that's where your TV would be, and your DSTV, and whatever your streaming service was. When lockdown ensured, now what happened is that you had whole hosts of family at home, heavily dependent on the network. Now, what this meant is that your home user transformed like that overnight. They transformed from just being a casual internet user to being a dependent internet user. Because now what was happening is that the family of 4 or 5, you would have 2 kids that were trying to do some form of online education or work, plus their streaming desires and needs. And that's for videos, that's for music, absolutely anything in terms of input is essentially accessible via the internet. And they're not going to be paying for data because the Wi-Fi is free. And that's why I live at home, is because I can have free Wi-Fi. Then you've got the dad who's obviously trying to either run his business or run his department from his house. He's needing to do a substantial amount of video conferencing calls. And what we saw is that a lot of the time, home networks just were not ready for 16 video feeds. And we don't blame them, because that's what you get for having a 3 meg ADSL line. But now, obviously, COVID has forced us all to have to relook and reshape our understanding of what a home internet connection is and what value it brings, that the quality of the network started to come under strain. And a lot of providers were left wanting, and a lot of providers were left in the dust. Some providers made it out, some heroes, some industry leaders that foresaw the increased amount of network use. And instead of building a larger tier 2 network, they decided, if I was to accelerate my TCP, would it essentially help me manage my bandwidth efficiently, and would it allow me to open up my pipe for more UDP flow? And essentially, these are the providers that came out on top. These are the providers that are rated as the best ISPs on my broadband. These are the ISPs that have got the fastest response time on speed tests. And the beautiful thing about these providers is that I can't tell you who they are, because we have a non-disclosure agreement. But I can tell you one thing: they use Bequant. So enough build up. Let's get straight into it. I just want to monitor the chat here. Everything's going good. I hope you guys are having a great time. See that the chat is built up, so that's good. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So what does Bequant do to optimize networks? Now, I think anyone that has received any marketing from anyone ever before has heard these words: optimization, increase, and double your capacity, and all of these words that essentially are just jargon. But what does Bequant do? So Bequant does 3 things. It accelerates, it analyzes, and it shapes. So what does it accelerate? It accelerates the TCP flow, all right? Now, what that means is that it increases the authentication process by delivering a transparent proxy in between the CPE device and the core network or the internet gateway. So essentially what starts happening is that your device, which is registering with an online service, be it Netflix, Google, Facebook, whatever, and we'll get a bit more into the analytics of that, and we can actually see how our network behaves, because essentially that's what Bequant's going to do, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to give you very high level insight into the behavior. And when I say behavior, I am talking about a temperamental teenager, because that is essentially how a network behaves. Networks behave in these crazy ways because consumers behave in crazy ways. And essentially what that does is that it sends our data up and down, and we actually don't know what's happening. We don't know the best way of shaping that specific bandwidth so that those fluctuations that are happening on the consumer side does not impact the rest of the people on the network. So apart from accelerating TCP, now as you know, layer 4 is made up of TCP and UDP traffic, and a lot of our most intense, bandwidth intense applications are TCP based. So what's essentially happening is that you have your pipe and you've got a gigabit pipe, you're a startup service provider, you've got a gigabit pipe, and now all of a sudden all your home users are basically just streaming Netflix at a ridiculous rate. They're watching YouTube, they're doing all these things. It's taking up majority of pipes. And then what starts happening is that your business customers start to suffer because latency sensitive applications like VoIP and video conferencing start taking a bit of a hit. But through shaping certain applications within your network, and this is what the deep packet inspection does, is that it gives you a holistic overview and it puts it onto these very attractive charts. And it says to you, this is how your network is behaving, and these are the IP addresses that are causing this network behavior. And then you say, okay, cool, well, I'm going to have to shape specific IP addresses so that they can get the full speed that they desire without using maximum bandwidth. So let me say that again. They're going to get the full speed that they desire without overloading their bandwidth. And that's essentially what acceleration does, is that it allows those TCP intensive applications to authenticate a lot faster, giving the impression of faster download speeds. And then through the analytics, you can basically see exactly how your network is behaving. And then should you have any type of data that would require you to shift specific management of certain applications and IPs, that's where the shaping comes in. So as I said in the beginning of this presentation, is that sometimes we have products that do a lot of things, and they do it well, but the more things you do, the less likely you are to be the best. That is why Bequant is the most fantastic product in Muro's portfolios, because it does 3 things, and it does these 3 things extremely well. It accelerates TCP, it does deep packet inspection, and it helps you shape and manage your bandwidth, helping you create better services downstream. All right. So what does the TCP acceleration does? Well, it actually increases the speed experienced by the network user. Now, at the end of the day, remember the layer 1 infrastructure is not changing. So you're not putting in a magical fiber cable that's going to help you shape TCP. No. That is why you need Bequant, because essentially what starts happening is that you can have 100% of your bandwidth, 10 megs, but the speed that your customers are experiencing is only at 70% of that 100. So what's happening is that there's a whole bunch of unused capacity, and it has nothing to do with the actual shape of the layer 1 infrastructure. That's just what happens when data is flowing upstream and downstream. There's some unused capacity that goes wanting. So what Bequant does, it's going to help us increase the speed experienced by network users so that they have the impression that the page is downloading faster. Because that's essentially what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you log on to a layer 7 application, so any type of YouTube, whatever, and the page is taking very long to load, that's TCP. That's the authentication process that's taking very long, and that's the latency as well. So now what happens is you've got seconds worth of latency, and your customer's sitting there, their Netflix is buffering, their YouTube's buffering, they can't even download their Outlook. So essentially what starts happening is that there are these bottlenecks, and this is why shaping of the network becomes so important, because the more users there are, the more IP addresses, and that's, remember ladies and gentlemen, that's what's happened. It's unavoidable. It's not like in case this happens. This is what happened. The home user went from being one IP address to multiple IP addresses that were using an intense amount of bandwidth. And that is why a product like Bequant was at the right place at the right time, we believe, because the providers that had instituted it right before and even during the lockdown period were able to save their networks and be able to prevent these bottlenecks. But essentially what we just want to do is we want to open up that pipe. We want to open up that pipe and we want to make sure that the TCP flows as it should flow without there being specific bottlenecks, so that all that unused capacity gets used, and then your customers can start benefiting from having a fiber connection or a wireless connection or LTE connection. So the solution is Bequant. Now, what I feel is important about this slide is that it kind of gives us a little bit of a holistic view into the core, the feeder, and the last mile. Okay, so as you can see here, we have 3 different types of providers. I think this is a brilliant diagram. So we've got 3 different types of providers. We've got an LTE provider, cellular provider, we've got a wireless provider, and we've got a fixed broadband provider, be it an FTTH provider, ADSL, not really because that's gone. So essentially what starts happening is that this is all of your last mile. So what we've seen from our distribution point of view is that a lot of customers have transformed their businesses into hybrid solutions. So you're not just an internet provider, you're not just a telephone provider, you've kind of accumulated a wealth of knowledge within, you know, the ICT landscape. And if you can deliver the service, why not at the end of the day? Because customers, let me tell you, and you can always ask yourself these questions. Do you want to be paying 5 different people to do 5 different things, or do you want to pay one person to do your 5 things that you trust? And that's essentially why the big service providers, the ones that are growing astronomically, are the ones that are offering full unified communications, voice, video, data, security, absolutely everything. And when it comes down to actually fixed broadband, there's a lot of hybrid solutions out there. We've got fiber providers that are instituting last mile wireless while they wait for wayleaves. We've got wireless providers instituting fiber because their customers don't want anything else. That's the beautiful thing about a trend. Fiber is a trend. People want fiber because they want to tell everyone that they've got fiber. So at the end of the day, you build your network to suit your customer, but that's the acquisition cost. You don't want to go through that acquisition cost and then you lose the customer in the next month. So essentially what starts happening is that you can have any form of last mile transmission medium. You can be LTE, you can have wireless broadband, you can have fixed fiber, fixed line. But essentially all this is going to be coming through back to your access gateway. And then essentially what that leads into is the internet gateway, which then breaks out into your cloud services or any other type of internet access. So where does Bequant fit in? Boom. It fits in very, very beautifully in between your access gateway and your internet gateway, because now what starts to happen, ladies and gentlemen, I really hope you can see my ticker, is that person sitting at home, Ryan sitting at home, Inigo sitting at his home, and essentially what starts happening is that we want to start streaming. The authentication process that would have happened would have had to be this packet would have to go through the fixed wired network up to the access gateway, through its internet gateway, and then ping whatever the domain host is. But with Bequant, we have revolutionized that process. I like to say we because I'm involved now, but I didn't help with creating the product, so please don't hold that to me. But what the geniuses at Bequant have done is that they've institutionalized this transparent proxy. So this is not a device that's going to interfere with your network. It's going to be placed in line with your access and your internet breakouts. And essentially what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, is that the ping has been halved. So what's happening now is that you can imagine Inigo and I sitting in our respective homes. We then ping a specific internet domain, and then what happens is our packets go all the way up, and then they actually authenticate here at the Bequant node. So the Bequant node says, hey, listen, man, you don't have, this is a 5K run. You don't have to run the last 3Ks. I'll tell you what, you run 2Ks, and you run the 2Ks backwards, I'll do the 3Ks and we'll run the 3Ks backwards. Essentially what's happening is that the 5Ks is being done at half the effort, at half the time. So that is why the TCP acceleration is so appealing, is because it's transparent, it's easy to install, and it completely operates without interference of the existing network. So you don't have to change anything within your desired network. The Bequant gets placed and then it starts working. So some of the operations of a transparent TCP proxy. So we're going to show you this now. This is a very cool video, but this is essentially what I just explained to you. Nathan, sorry, I'm just having a look at the chat now. I apologize about the audio. Nathan, can you just drop your email address into the chat box and then I will send you this video. But let's just, if everyone's watching the specific video. So as you can see, these are the cloud servers. These are the two devices, just as I was explaining now with Inigo. You got the packet, it wants to authenticate. It's now going to have to go all the way to the server if this video ever gets there. So this is, again, a direct path, no acceleration. This is without Bequant. This is the inferior way of doing it. Now, the superior way of managing your network is to institutionalize Bequant and then allow for the packets to authenticate on the Bequant node. Again, reducing the time drastically. I mean, any provider knows that milliseconds are worth gold on the last mile side of things. So if you've got a latency sensitive network that has got 100 millisecond ping, 130 millisecond ping, then you need to get off of this webinar call. You need to hook me up on the cell phone and you need to say, Ryan, I have to get one of these nodes. I hear that you're doing a 14-day trial. How can we go ahead with it? Because that's what we'll show you in these upcoming slides, is that this is what happens to the acceleration on any type of transmission medium, be it LTE, be it fixed line, be it wireless. You know, when I started to investigate TCP acceleration, it was initially primarily used in satellite broadbands because, as you know, satellites are very far away. So the authentication that was happening between that CPE or that antenna and the ground surface was drastically long. So, but that was seconds worth of latency, probably maybe even minutes. But networks have changed, they have become better, but there is still room for improvement. And if you're a company or a business that feels that latency is hindering your progress, it's getting in the way of your growth, it's affecting your customer retention rates, then you need to look no further than what Bequant can do for you, because Bequant is designed for for high latency networks that are looking to reduce their ping drastically. And that's essentially what we're showing you over here. So this was a live test that was done from Bequant. And this is a Netflix speed improvement over over megabits. So as you can see, on a wireless network, we've got 91% improvement. On different types of fiber network, we've got 166% improvement. You are going to see acceleration happen. And the beautiful thing about the Bequant software is that it proves it to you. So that's what the deep packet inspection is about. And essentially that this is what your deep packet inspection will look like. And I really like the look of these graphs. And also just because it gives you exactly what you need in terms of the behavior of your network. So if we start to investigate these statistics, we are looking at specific traffic and we are looking at what is taking up most of the traffic. Because if your users are still experiencing slow speeds, slow downloads and things like that, then this inspection, these statistics give you an insider's view into what are the applications that are taking up most of your bandwidth and how heavy are they on your bandwidth. So as you can see, I mean, 10% footprint.net, YouTube, and then this Akamai. You know, if I was the provider, I'd be looking at all of these and saying, okay, well, what are the IP addresses that are doing this? You know what also happens that people leave their TVs on, and there's a whole bunch of things that happen. I mean, some people just download games the whole night, and that's what the Akamai could be. Is that could just be one server, one IP address, one kid, or even a fairly, old adult. They downloading games because that's just what they do, because that's what they want. So if your network is starting to suffer, this deep packet inspection can provide that insight so that you can maybe shape that specific person's bandwidth so that they're not taking up too much of your pipe. Because essentially whatever's happening downstream is going to affect upstream. essentially, because it's a two-way streak. So the traffic identification with DPI, deep packet inspection, allows the network provider to gain more insight into the behavior of the network. And the reason I say behavior is that look at how this graph behaves. Look at how internet usage behaves. Look at how things spike over specific time periods, over specific days. You know, if you really want to know your network, know how it behaves, then deep packet inspection is where it's at. And the beautiful thing about Bequant deep packet inspection, they can go even further into this. We can start doing domain inspection per IP address, which is, again, helpful if you have a specific IP address that is taking up a lot of your bandwidth at weird times and you want to know what they're doing. They could be doing some illegal stuff, or they could not be doing illegal stuff, or they could be on a voice call, or what they've done is that they're on a video conference and they haven't ended the meeting. Whatever the cause of the bandwidth constraint, you will have insight into, and it will allow for you to then shift something, shape it, or deal with it in a way that you feel is warranted. All right, so the only difference between this graph and the one before is that this is a pie chart, and I love pies. I love pie and I love charts. So pie charts for me is like Christmas. So traffic identification with DPI, this is, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is just giving you a bit more of a high level overview into, of your 100% bandwidth, this is how it's being split. And like I said, obviously this is a slide deck, but in the Bequant, you could actually click into YouTube and you can go and see what are the IP addresses that are taking up most of that space. And again, see exactly what time is all this happening at, so that you can kind of understand your network, how it's behaving, so that you can shape specific applications on specific time periods, so that no one in your network experiences any type of congestion. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh yeah, there's lots of traffic at 7 o'clock at night and in the morning. Not with Bequant. The traffic is just flowing. You're not going to stop at a robot and wait and sit and get irritated, because the traffic is flowing as it needs to, because whatever has had to be shaped has been shaped. All right, so this is just what I spoke about recently. So the subscriber traffic analysis. So essentially, again, you're looking at your whole node and you're looking at specific IPs and you're looking at how much bandwidth they're taking. And if anything stands out to you, then you can make a specific change. I mean, this IP address is using up 11% of the network. What's going on? You know what I mean? Over here as well, 12%. This will allow for you to, again, the reason why it's called deep packet inspection is because you go deep into the behavior of how your packets operate. So again, Bequant enables us to learn more about our networks and how our customers are behaving, so that we might better serve those customers. All right, so now the bandwidth management, another very, very, very cool feature with Bequant. So there's several policies that you could institutionalize, and I'll maybe ask my colleague Inigo to break this down a bit better, because again, this is a bit more of a tailor-made solution for people that have got the necessity to manage their bandwidth. But essentially what starts happening is that you can pick a specific policy. I'll ask Inigo to go further into the different policies. You can set a specific speed limit. You can also assign which users are going to be limited during that policy. Also over here, you can say which apps are limited, and then what is the whole network throughput threshold to apply limits. So how much speed are you going to be able to give, or how much throughput, how much capacity are you going to be able to give the specific policy, which has got a speed limit attached to it, a user limitation, and an application limitation. But I'll allow for Inigo to maybe go into that a bit further. Or Inigo, would you like to jump in now?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me,
Yeah,
Brian?
perfectly.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I mean, you have summarized it perfectly. What the bandwidth management does is basically, so we want to limit the speed of specific applications. We can limit the speed of a certain user. I mean, generally all the ISPs, they set up plans to the customers, 10 megs, 20, 100, whatever. But when trying to you have situations with congestion or with bad quality, that's when maybe you will need to limit specific applications. Mainly, our customers, they say they want to limit video streaming, because video streaming tends to take all the bandwidth on your connection. You have Netflix that they use, and they open a couple of simultaneous connections, so they can grab everything. Same thing YouTube. So if you have Netflix, YouTube, and you try to maybe do video conference with voice over IP, you will see that there is no available bandwidth. So in these situations, you consider limiting this by applications, and you can do it with our product. What you will do is set up a policy. For instance, you want to limit, you set up a speed limit per IP of your customers. So we need to be deployed in a place where we see the end user's IP. That there should not be an NAT after us, between us and the customer. So we can see the IP. We can limit it. For instance, I don't know, maybe 4 megabits per second. And you could introduce which IP addresses you want to apply this policy. In this case, all of your network. You can on the right upper part, you can set up a threshold that when you're not reaching a specific amount of traffic in your network, maybe you don't want to limit, but when your network starts reaching this level of traffic, that's maybe when you're suffering some congestion, then you will start applying this limitation. And then you can set up the domains you want to limit. We have several signatures already in our product, so you can just say, I want to limit all the video streaming, or you want to limit the upgrades, or from Android, from Apple, from Microsoft, that they take a lot of bandwidth. So with that, you can as mentioned before, you will be able to limit to a specific specific speeds. And in the next slide, we can share, Ryan, that the impact of these limitations. This is an example of one of our customers that they had plenty of capacity, but they were suffering because of the customers were not able to have the best quality, because they were having Netflix, YouTube at the same time, while also doing using browsing or doing conference calls. So in this example, this customer, they limit to 4 megabits per second the video streaming. So the aggregated Netflix, YouTube, HBO, whatever video streaming they were using will not take more than 4 megabits per second, and they were able to. They did not have any complaints, so they were giving the perception of the customers was the same as before, but they were able to save about 15% of peak throughput in the network. And not only that, is that this reduction, this limitation of bandwidth for video streaming allowed them to reduce of about 5 milliseconds, which was something like 10-20% of the RTT. So what happens is that the buffers in the network were starting to empty, so they were having additional capacity in the network for VoIP or for latency sensitive applications.
Right. Thank you, Inigo. And I think that complements what we were speaking about in terms of our deep packet inspection, is that once you've got the data, what are you going to do with it? It's all well and good having all of the analytics in the world, but you're going to need to act on those analysis. And the whole point of the deep packet inspection is to provide enough insight so that you as the provider, once you start actually managing your bandwidth, it's all for the customer. It's all for the customer that's paying you monthly for your internet services. You want to be able to serve them in the best way possible. And if it requires shaping of specific applications so that they can have an enjoyable user experience, then that's just what you got to do. Because at the end of the day, a happy customer is a paying customer, is a return customer, is someone that will recommend you to someone else. So when we hear the word shape, it's actually, we're going to get in shape. We're going to get your network into shape, and it's going to be a fit fighting network. and all of the customers are going to want to stay with you because they are not experiencing what everyone hates, which is latency and lag and slow speeds. Because if you want to lose customers quickly, then keep delivering high latency services through to them. But if you want to be able to retain customers and move forward into new customer acquisitions, understanding how knowledge and behavior patterns of how your network performs can lead you to make decisions based off of that research so that your customers benefit downstream. All right, Inigo, do you want to maybe take over on this slide? We will be discussing some of the hardware options, but I thought
Sure.
you maybe want to speak about some advantages over other QoS systems.
Right. There are other systems, of course, that do QoS. They usually what they do is they fill up a buffer. So when the buffer for a certain customer reaches the level of a specific speed that there was the limit, then they start dropping packets. The drop of packets, they will be recovered. They will be retransmissions. So that's going to take even longer to these retransmissions. So the way they slow down these networks is by dropping packets again. But we don't do that, especially on TCP. We will signal the servers to stop sending more data if we're reaching a specific speed. So that's a big advantage that compared to other QoS systems. The good thing also is that it works together with the TCP acceleration. So you can speed up your connections. You can speed up your content, your TCP content, until it reaches a specific limitation that has been configured. So taking advantage of both features in parallel, we believe we have a very competitive pricing. I mean, similar products have been developed, especially for large tier 1 carriers that they have the means and the capacity and the financial to buy these solutions. But we have been able to produce one product that does everything at a very reasonable and attractive pricing. We already have about 130 customers worldwide. Most of them are ISPs that go up to 10 megs, 20 megs, but most of them are 1 meg, 2 megs ISPs, which means that this is something that is reasonable priced. So yeah, I mean I think it's very simple to deploy. I mean, it's just plug and play solution. You don't have to do practically nothing in terms of configuration. We're just like a switch with 2 ports. So it's extremely easy to configure. We can go maybe later on this part also, but yeah, I mean, of course, I have to just tell that, and also Ryan will say it's to try to test it in your network, and you will see what we can do for you.
I think, Inigo, let's talk about the deployment. I think that's
Sure.
an often a frequently asked question. So where is the best place to deploy Bequant in terms of this diagram on your screen?
Yeah, the best place would be at your core network, in a place where, of course, we need to see all the traffic going down and up. So because we need to see these acknowledgements. So it will be in, after the core router, someplace or before the internet gateway. We typically require 2 ports in your set, 1 in, 1 out. Maybe you have several links, so we can have several ports, of course. We support, depends on if you have copper, Ethernet, or you have fiber. We also support it. That's not a problem. Maybe you can show the whole graph, Ryan? Right. So we just required an IP address for management. So in terms of routing, there's nothing to be done there. We just, again, we're fully transparent, so you don't have to do anything on your routing. What we suggest is to have a bypass link. So in case there's a failure on the hardware, whatever, the traffic is not suffer. Your network will not have a optimization, but it will continue, of course, working. That's the typically deployment that we are suggesting our customers, and that's what they do in the networks.
All right, thank you, Inigo. I think let's chat a little bit about hardware.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there are many different ways of deploying Bequant, but especially you're going to need to let us know if you want to do a free trial, what size capacity node are you keen on testing? Because essentially, as Inigo was saying, the deployment of the trial is extremely smooth, it's seamless. The hardware specifications is what we just need to iron out. And look, these are the recommended hardware specs that we provide. Now, in the same breath, we understand that, we're a distributor. We should be distributing servers. So we are in the process of finding a white box solution that is affordable and that works well enough with Bequant, because we did notice that there was a slight barrier towards people trialing the software, is because you do need a dedicated piece of hardware for the Bequant software. But as Inigo explained, in terms of the deployment, it's extremely easy to deploy. It's not meant to affect your network in any way, shape, or form. It's only made to make it better, but there's no high-level routing that has to happen. What I can say from my own personal experience is that the Bequant support team is extremely helpful. These guys take a very hands-on role, which I think is good, because they want to prove that their product increases the performance of your network. So just let them drive. At the end of the day, if you give them access and you give them control, you give them that IP address, they can come in, make sure that it's set up for you, make sure that it's running appropriately. And then what I've also seen is nice is that once the trial period is done, if there's any type of debrief, or maybe a further explanation of specific graphs, let's chat. You know what I mean? Inigo is extremely helpful. He's available most of the time. The nice thing about our Spanish friends is that we've got similar time zones. We just have different weather. But for now, I think what's very nice is that the Bequant team has been extremely present in our market. And it's sometimes very rare to have that. Sometimes we get some international vendors that just kind of assume that the distributor is going to take it off and move ahead with it. But I think because of the sensitivity of the network on a layer 4, is that you need the professionals to come in and to show you how to drive this. Because once you just get that little bit of an expose into how to run Bequant, how to use deep packet inspection, and then finally, once you have all the data, how can you shape your bandwidth in such a way that essentially anyone downstream is just going to benefit. So what we've done, ladies and gentlemen, is that we've created a registration form. All right, now this registration form is going to be sent to everyone that's participated in this webinar. The registration form is, would you like a free trial or not? So what you're going to do is you're going to say yes, and you're going to say when, you're going to say right now. I'm joking. You can actually tell us, there'll be dates. There's a calendar associated with the registration page that will enable you to pick your desired date of deployment. But again, one of the contingencies is, do you have the necessary physical hardware spec? And if you don't, this is the physical hardware spec. We do have a local partner, Supermicro. They offer very high quality compatible hardware for the deployment of Bequant. But watch the space. We're going to find a product that is more affordable and that is white box. But compliance, we do things legally, and sometimes there's some regulatory hurdles. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just ask ICASA about that spectrum they were supposed to release 2 years ago. So,
Ryan, if I may add also, is that these are the recommended hardware, as you mentioned, but it happens a lot that ISPs that do have an old server, maybe 5-10 years old maximum, that they have there, they don't use it, they can dedicate it for the trial and maybe even for the deployment. So we're ready, and we support a lot of older platforms. So don't hesitate to tell us what servers you have available. They have to be dedicated now. we're working in the next couple of months. We probably will be releasing a virtualized software, so you will not have to dedicate a hardware. But for now on, for the trial in the next couple of months, it have to be on a fully dedicated server. So, but don't hesitate to tell us which servers you have available.
Yeah, exactly, ladies and gentlemen. I think the main point is that this is a collaborative initiative. You know, this is not something where you're going to buy a disk from us, you're going to go and install it by yourself and then struggle. That's the last thing we want, and that's why we want to try to be as present as possible with the deployment, especially with the trial, because from what we've seen, once the trial goes right, you've already got the system installed, it's already accelerating TCP, and then essentially you can either start choosing the monthly license or we have a perpetual license, and I'll maybe just share a little bit of that with you. So this is essentially our licensing option. So you would need to tell us where would you fit on the spectrum, but essentially this is for life. So you can either choose a perpetual license or once-off cost. I would recommend against the perpetual license, at least for the first year. Look, at the end of the day, it's going to be cheaper for you to do 1 year on a monthly basis. But until you're 100% comfortable, until you know that you can run your own Bequant without needing support, then you can look at the perpetual licenses. But, you know, I think the main aspect of this is that we demo onto a smaller node. And then from what we've seen, you know, sometimes customers put us on a 10 gig node straight away. And very pleased to say that it works. One of my top customers, unfortunately, I just cannot divulge their name. I wish I could. I would love to brag about them, but fiber provider, one of the top fiber providers in Johannesburg, when I took over the brand, they had just started their trial with Bequant. And I have to say that the level of support from Bequant is just unparalleled to what I've experienced. I mean, we had literally the CEO of Bequant and all of the supporting engineers assisting this provider with answering all their queries, you know, because it's a move, it's a strategic move, because you're looking at saving you costs by spending more money. That is the irony of business, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you want to save money, you need to spend money. If you want to make money, you need to spend money. So I think it's about spending the smart money. It's about being strategic with our choices and understanding exactly what does this product do for me, how can it affect my services, and will it lead to more customer retention and more acquisitions? And if your answer is yes to all of those, then Bequant is the product for you. But I see that we are being hurried here in terms of time. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to say thank you very much. If I can just bring everyone's attention to this beautiful barcode, one of the best barcodes you'll see ever. If you scan this barcode, what it's going to do is it's going to give you access into a raffle to win a prize that Bequant has sponsored themselves, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a 2,000 Rand Take-A-Lot voucher. You know, it's very hard buying a gift for someone you don't know. That's the big challenge. So that's why we just thought, let's get an open check, let's get an open voucher, and just let the customer decide what they want. Because next thing you know, we get a DVD, and then that person doesn't watch that DVD, and then the raffle ends up being a waste. So we went for the voucher approach. If everyone can just have a look at their barcode, scan their barcode. If you're having difficulty scanning your barcode, just holler at me. Let me know. Dieter asked, does Miro bill for support on this or Bequant? So we bill you, and essentially that opens up the support to Bequant, Dieter. So all of your liaisons in terms of a technical and deployment side will be with the Bequant support team, but any form of commercial invoicing or product developments, that's going to happen through Miro, through your partners Miro. And should you decide on a monthly option, we've just autonomized everything, ladies and gentlemen. So it's beautiful. Literally, we can send you an invoice 4 days before your license is up. If you have got terms with us, then boom, we just smash whatever available credits with you. It's really a smooth and really a seamless process. But I have to call this webinar to a close. Inigo, thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate having your presence here with us.
Thank you, Ryan, to of course, all the attendees for your time.
Cool. It's always nice to put a person to a name and to a brand. And just wanted to say thank you for all the support that you've done for Miro and for our customers. And I'm very excited about the way forward. I really think this is the right product, not just for Miro, but for our customers. And I really hope that we can help improve a lot more networks and increase the amount of people connecting to the internet in South Africa. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, I'm going to say we're out. Thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that everyone enjoys IPCon. Please, if you have the time, log into the next session and log into the session after that. It's valuable. There's seriously good info here, product developments, information on deployments. We want to make your life easier, so stick around. You won't regret it. Gracia, thank you for joining. Have a lovely day, everyone. Cheers then.